And a few days later, my father calls me and my brother-in-law into his office. He tells us that Pete has been cleared by this forensic examiner and that we need to submit and move forward.
The conflict within the Lamb family reached an unprecedented level following Joni Lamb's relationship with Doug Weiss, exposing deep fractures that had long remained hidden from public view. While Joni's decision to move on after Marcus Lamb's passing had already been met with scrutiny, the strongest opposition came from within her own family, particularly from her son, Jonathan Lamb. Once seen as the natural successor to his father's legacy at Daystar, Jonathan found himself at odds with his mother, leading to a public and painful family divide that played out behind closed doors and in whispers throughout the Christian community. Jonathan had grown up in the world of Christian broadcasting, witnessing firsthand the weight of his family's influence. His father, Marcus, had built Daystar into a powerful media empire, one that relied on its reputation for upholding Christian values. When Marcus passed, many assumed that Jonathan would step into a greater leadership role, continuing the vision his father had laid out. Instead, he found himself increasingly alienated, watching as his mother's personal decisions began reshaping the future of the ministry in ways he found deeply troubling. The breaking point came when Joni introduced Doug Weiss into their lives. Jonathan, along with his siblings, strongly opposed the relationship, believing it to be both inappropriate and unbiblical. He viewed Doug's sudden presence as a disruption, one that not only altered family dynamics but also threatened the stability of Daystar. According to Jonathan, all of Joni's children had voiced their concerns, but instead of engaging in open dialogue, Joni dismissed their objections, standing firm in her decision to move forward with Doug. This, he claimed, was not simply about grief or personal happiness. It was about control, secrecy, and an unwillingness to consider how her actions were affecting those around her. In one particularly shocking revelation, Jonathan recalled a conversation with his mother that left him deeply unsettled. While discussing his reluctance to support her marriage, Joni allegedly tried to secure his loyalty by offering him an influential role at Daystar, promising financial security and leadership within the organization. She went as far as to suggest that we could all die in a plane crash, a statement that, while perhaps said in frustration, sent chills down his spine. For Jonathan, this was more than just an offhand comment. It felt like a moment of manipulation, an attempt to steer the conversation in a direction that would ensure his compliance. The remark haunted him, planting seeds of doubt about the true nature of the events surrounding his father's death and his mother's motivations. The tension between Joni and her children only escalated when Jonathan and his wife, Susie, publicly denounced her relationship with Doug. Susie, who had been close to Joni for years, found herself in an uncomfortable position, watching as the family she had married into became increasingly divided. She sided with her husband, sharing his belief that Joni's choices were reckless and damaging to the integrity of the family and the ministry. The rift deepened, creating a divide that seemed impossible to bridge. Adding to the turmoil were whispers of internal struggles within Daystar itself. With Jonathan pulling away from his mother's influence, questions arose about who would ultimately control the network. While Joni remained the public face of the organization, some within the Christian broadcasting community speculated that the conflict with her children could have long-term implications for the ministry's future. If Daystar had once been a unified vision under Marcus's leadership, it was now at risk of becoming a fractured empire, torn apart by personal disputes and unresolved tensions. For Jonathan, this was not just about losing his father. It was about watching the foundation of his family crumble under the weight of unresolved conflict. He had always envisioned Daystar as a testament to his father's faith and commitment, a legacy that would be carried forward with integrity. Now, with his mother moving in a direction he could not support, he was left questioning his place within the very empire he had been raised to help lead. Despite the growing divide, Joni remained steadfast in her decisions, defending her relationship and dismissing the accusations leveled against her. She insisted that Doug was a man of integrity, someone who had brought her peace and happiness after a time of deep sorrow. To Jonathan and his siblings, the issue was never just about Doug. It was about the erosion of trust, the rewriting of narratives, and the unwillingness to acknowledge the pain her choices had caused within their own family. As the public continued to speculate about the future of Daystar and the Lamb family, one thing became clear: this was not just a private disagreement. It was a struggle for power, for legacy, and for control over a ministry that had been built on the foundation of faith. Whether reconciliation was possible remained uncertain. But for now, the Lamb family was no longer united, and the wounds left by this conflict might never fully heal.
I mean, just the fact that, you're heavily making out, like right away.
Yeah. I don't don't apologize for that. Yes, we were making out because we wanted to see if we had that kind of connection.
Joni Lamb's relationship with Doug Weiss quickly became one of the most scrutinized aspects of her life following the death of her husband, Marcus Lamb. While Joni had been a respected figure in Christian broadcasting, known for her role in Daystar, her decision to move forward with Doug so soon after Marcus's passing sparked intense speculation. Doug, a well-regarded marriage counselor and expert in overcoming sexual addiction, had built his reputation on guiding Christian couples through the trials of marriage. However, his personal life took a sudden and unexpected turn when he filed for divorce from his wife of 30 years, in January 2022, just 2 months after Marcus's death. This timing raised immediate red flags, with many questioning whether his relationship with Joni had been developing long before his marriage officially ended.
There's so many more stories I haven't told anybody. For example, Jonathan took our kids to our mutual friend's birthday party, and our daughter stuck close to daddy. And later, after I wasn't there, later the next day, Pete's wife told me, Pete's so heartbroken, she wouldn't come close to him the whole party. And she was like, she needs to say sorry to Pete. There's so many stories that the world doesn't know that I'm not telling because I'm not trying to convict this man. Right. Law enforcement will do it.
The secrecy surrounding their courtship only fueled rumors. Joni did not immediately disclose her involvement with Doug, and those close to her claimed that she carefully controlled the way their relationship was introduced to the public. Instead of making a straightforward announcement, she first invited Pastor Jimmy Evans onto her table talk show, where he delivered a segment explaining why divorce was permissible under Christian doctrine in cases of addiction, adultery, abuse, and abandonment. Only after this discussion had framed the conversation did she formally introduce Doug as her fiancé. This calculated approach did little to dispel suspicions that the relationship had been carefully managed behind the scenes to appear more acceptable to the Daystar audience.
Many women know women whose husbands are struggling with sex outside of marriage, sex with self, emotional affairs, social media affairs, all kinds of stuff. You ladies talk about this stuff, and it's sad. Some of you are living with this in a secret way. You know, but nobody else knows. What are you supposed to do when you find out that your husband has a sex addiction?
Adding to the controversy was Doug's past. While he had built a ministry focused on helping men overcome sexual sin and repair their marriages, his sudden decision to leave his wife cast doubt on his own adherence to these values. His ex-wife reportedly begged him to reconsider, a detail that, rather than discouraging Joni, seemed to confirm her belief that he was a great man. According to leaked reports, Joni allegedly told those close to her that Doug's ex-wife's desperation to keep him only proved his worth as a husband, reinforcing her desire to marry him. The pace of their relationship also raised eyebrows. While grieving a spouse is an individual process, many found it unusual that Joni had moved on so quickly. To the outside world, it seemed that Marcus's passing had barely settled before she had found herself in a new and deeply personal connection. Some speculated that her grief had played a role in her decision-making, while others suggested that the relationship had been in motion long before Marcus had even fallen ill. There were even whispers that Doug had been providing Joni with emotional support while she was still married, an allegation she fiercely denied. Joni's attempts to defend her relationship only seemed to add to the controversy. In leaked audio recordings, she passionately rejected claims that Doug had sent her inappropriate messages while Marcus was still alive. She insisted that their connection had been pure and guided by prayer, emphasizing that they had sought counsel from Christian leaders before making their relationship public. However, her defensiveness and the intensity with which she addressed these accusations suggested that she was acutely aware of how damaging they could be. Critics also questioned whether Joni and Doug's union was truly built on love, or whether it was a strategic partnership. As the widow of a powerful media mogul, Joni stood at the helm of Daystar, a massive Christian television network. Doug, while successful in his own field, did not command the same level of influence. Some speculated that their marriage was as much about merging their influence as it was about personal affection. With Doug's background in counseling and Joni's media empire, their union created a powerful narrative of healing and second chances, one that could be marketed to the Daystar audience. Despite all the speculation, Joni remained firm in her conviction that her relationship with Doug was a blessing. She spoke openly about how much joy he brought into her life, describing their marriage as a new chapter of happiness after years of difficulty. But for those who had followed the story from the beginning, the questions remained. Had Joni truly found love again? Or was this relationship built on something far more complex? Was Doug a guiding force in her life, or had their relationship been carefully crafted for a larger purpose? And most importantly, had Marcus's death played a role in setting the stage for this new union in ways the public had yet to fully understand? As the rumors continued to swirl, Joni and Doug pressed forward, unwavering in their insistence that their love was genuine. But whether the public and Joni's own family would ever fully accept their union remained an open question, one that would continue to shape Joni's legacy for years to come. Marcus Lamb's death in November 2021 was officially attributed to complications from COVID-19, but speculation surrounding the circumstances of his passing has only grown in the years since. As the co-founder of Daystar, Marcus was more than just a televangelist. He was the driving force behind a media empire, a man whose influence reached millions. His death, sudden and unexpected, sent shockwaves through the Christian community, but it also raised unsettling questions. For some, the timing of his passing, coupled with the rapid changes within Daystar and Joni Lamb's personal life, felt too convenient to be mere coincidence. One of the earliest sources of speculation stemmed from Marcus's control over Daystar's finances and operations. He had built the network with a firm hand, ensuring that every decision, every dollar, and every major broadcast reflected his vision for the ministry. His leadership, though authoritative, kept Daystar on a steady course, making it one of the most prominent Christian networks in the world. With his passing, that control shifted suddenly and completely to Joni. This abrupt transition led some to wonder if internal conflicts over power and direction had been brewing long before Marcus's death. While there was no direct evidence to suggest foul play, the whispers of betrayal and hidden agendas began to spread. Further fueling these suspicions was the speed at which Joni moved forward in her personal life. Just weeks after Marcus's passing, she began forming a relationship with Doug Weiss, a man who, until then, had been relatively unknown to the Daystar audience. His presence in Joni's life so soon after her husband's death raised uncomfortable questions. Had their relationship truly begun after Marcus passed, or had there been an emotional connection developing behind the scenes? If Marcus had been aware of any tensions or betrayals before his death, had those concerns played a role in the final months of his life? These questions, though largely speculative, fed into a growing narrative that Marcus's passing had been more than just a tragedy. It had been a catalyst for something much deeper. Adding to the intrigue were reports of tensions between Marcus and Joni before his death. Some sources suggested that cracks had begun to form in their marriage and professional partnership, particularly over leadership decisions at Daystar. While outwardly, they maintained a united front, there were rumors that disagreements over financial management and ministry direction had caused significant strain. If these tensions were real, they could provide context for why Joni was so quick to take full control of the network after Marcus's passing. To those who doubted the official story, the question wasn't just how Marcus died, but what was happening in his life leading up to that moment. Perhaps the most chilling speculation came from a private conversation Jonathan Lamb allegedly had with his mother. When he resisted supporting her relationship with Doug, Joni reportedly tried to assure him of her ability to provide for him, even suggesting that we could all die in a plane crash. While this statement could have been said in frustration, or as a careless remark, it haunted Jonathan, who took it as a sign that his mother's priorities had shifted in ways he didn't fully understand. The idea that Joni could make such an unsettling comment so soon after Marcus's death only added to the doubts and suspicions surrounding the situation. Despite all of this speculation, there has been no concrete evidence to suggest that Marcus's death was anything other than what was publicly stated. His passing, though tragic, followed a battle with COVID-19, an illness that had claimed countless lives around the world. And yet, for those who remain skeptical, the pieces of the puzzle never quite fit together. The power shift, the new relationship, the family conflict, these were not the signs of a typical grieving widow. They were the signs of a woman moving forward, rapidly and decisively, in ways that many found difficult to reconcile with the narrative of a heartbroken wife. As time has passed, the rumors surrounding Marcus's death have refused to fade. The lack of a transparent investigation into the final days of his life has only fueled further speculation. Supporters of Joni dismissed the rumors as baseless, arguing that grief takes different forms and that her actions were those of a woman trying to rebuild after an unimaginable loss. Critics, however, see the situation differently. To them, the unanswered questions are not just coincidences, they are clues, pieces of a larger mystery that has yet to be fully uncovered. The truth behind Marcus Lamb's death may never be definitively known. What remains clear, however, is that his passing set off a chain reaction that reshaped the future of Daystar, fractured his family, and left behind a legacy tainted by uncertainty. Whether these suspicions are rooted in reality, or merely in the human see to seek explanations where none exist, one thing is certain: the story of Marcus Lamb did not end with his death. It only became more complicated. Allegations of secrecy and manipulation have surrounded Joni Lamb's decisions following Marcus Lamb's death, casting doubt on the transparency of both her personal and professional choices. From the beginning, her handling of information regarding her relationship with Doug Weiss raised suspicions. Instead of openly acknowledging their engagement, she orchestrated a carefully staged announcement on Table Talk, featuring Pastor Jimmy Evans, who first delivered a message justifying divorce in cases of adultery, addiction, abuse, and abandonment. This strategic framing made it appear as though her relationship with Doug was morally and biblically sound before it was even revealed to the audience. The secrecy extended beyond her engagement. When Doug's ex-wife, Lisa, pushed back against how she had been portrayed, Daystar swiftly removed the episode from its archives, erasing the narrative that painted Lisa as the problem in Doug's failed marriage. This act of damage control suggested a pattern: when information didn't serve Joni's interests, it was quietly buried. The same tactics appeared to be at play when concerns arose within her own family. When her children opposed her relationship with Doug, Joni allegedly attempted to secure Jonathan's loyalty by offering him a position of power within Daystar, a move that felt less like a mother seeking unity and more like a calculated effort to control the narrative. The most unsettling part of these allegations was how quickly Daystar seemed to shift under Joni's leadership. Those who had once been loyal to Marcus found themselves sidelined or silenced, and any dissent within the organization was met with swift dismissal. The ministry, once seen as a beacon of faith, was now embroiled in internal conflict, its future clouded by distrust. Whether intentional or not, Joni's actions painted a picture of a leader determined to maintain control at all costs, even if it meant rewriting history to fit her version of the truth. Allegations of abuse within Daystar added another layer of controversy to an already fractured organization, raising serious concerns about accountability and leadership under Joni Lamb. The most alarming accusations involved a trusted insider within the network, referred to as Pete, who was accused of abusing Jonathan and Susie Lamb's 9-year-old daughter. Rather than addressing the situation with transparency and urgency, Daystar's leadership allegedly worked behind the scenes to suppress the claims, attempting to protect their own image rather than seeking justice for the victim. Jonathan and Susie, already at odds with Joni over her marriage to Doug Weiss, were devastated by the lack of action taken against the accused. Instead of launching a thorough investigation, Daystar relied on polygraph tests to clear Pete's name, an approach that many saw as deeply flawed, given the well-documented unreliability of such tests in determining guilt or innocence. Critics were quick to point out that an institution built on Christian values should have prioritized the well-being of a child over damage control, yet the organization remained disturbingly silent. The refusal to acknowledge or properly investigate the allegations only fueled further distrust within the Christian community. Supporters of Daystar began questioning whether the network's leadership truly upheld the principles they preached, while skeptics saw it as further proof of a culture of secrecy and manipulation. The accusations, combined with the ongoing turmoil within the Lamb family, painted a picture of a ministry more focused on protecting its power than living up to the moral and ethical standards it claimed to represent. Whether justice would ever be served remained uncertain, but the scandal left a permanent stain on Daystar's credibility. The controversy surrounding Joni Lamb, her marriage to Doug Weiss, and the turmoil within Daystar has left the Christian community deeply divided. For years, Daystar stood as one of the most influential Christian broadcasting networks, promoting messages of faith, family values, and moral integrity. However, the recent scandals, ranging from the rushed engagement to allegations of secrecy and abuse, have shaken the trust of many loyal viewers. Some believe that Joni's actions are a natural response to grief, a woman simply trying to rebuild her life after a devastating loss. Others, however, see her decisions as calculated moves that prioritize personal ambition over biblical principles. Supporters argue that Joni has endured tremendous hardship and is now finding happiness again with Doug. They see her as a strong woman of faith who, despite criticism, remains committed to her calling. In their eyes, the accusations against her are fueled by misunderstandings, jealousy, or an unwillingness to accept change. They defend her leadership, believing that Daystar will continue to thrive under her guidance. However, those who remain skeptical point to the uncomfortable timeline of events: the swift engagement, the removal of content that painted her in a negative light, and the fractured relationships with her own children. They question whether the integrity of Daystar can survive under leadership that seems increasingly driven by personal interests rather than spiritual mission. Perhaps the most troubling aspect is the lack of clear answers. The unresolved questions surrounding Marcus Lamb's death, the secrecy around Joni's relationship, and the alleged suppression of abuse claims within Daystar have only fueled further speculation. The organization, once seen as a beacon of Christian values, now faces an identity crisis. Can it recover from these scandals, or has too much damage been done? While Joni continues to push forward, the growing divide within the Christian community suggests that the repercussions of these events will not be easily forgotten. Whether this is a story of redemption or a cautionary tale remains to be seen, but for now, the trust that once defined Daystar has been severely shaken.